I'm Maria Tsennykh, and welcome to Catching Fraud and Valuation Miscalculation, where finance meets fraud prevention. I'm here to share the art and science behind fraud prevention, forensic accounting, and valuation, giving you innovative strategies to outsmart financial crime, manage risk effectively, and maximize your value ethically. Welcome back. Today is our third podcast recording, and we have Yulia Maksimenko back with us. I am Maria Tsennykh, a founder and managing partner of TSENU Consulting, and Yulia Maksimenko is a principal at TSENU Consulting. And today we'll have a great, hopefully, discussion about who is the typical fraudster. We have our own assumptions about that, but Yulia will walk us through the pitfalls and bring some insights about who's the typical fraudster. Yulia, please.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for that. I think it is an exciting topic, in fact, and a lot of people are asking me questions about that, like, who is that mysterious person who commits fraud? Is it somehow different from what we see in movies, or is it similar to what our imagination draws us? What is this person like? What are the characteristics of this person? So I'll draw the picture now, and then we'll go step by step through this criteria and discuss and maybe challenge that and compare it to my personal experience during investigations of fraud and yours experience, Marie, as well. I would appreciate your feedback and share your experience. That would be great. So in general, this is a male. In the majority of cases, this is a male. Person between, let's say, 35 to 45 years old. This person usually commits a fraud against his own employer, so not against some random company. And this person usually works in finance or finance-related role. In terms of
Julia, I apologize. Is it based on just general statistics? What you know about the market? Not only your experience, but just general.
No, I'm speaking now about
common knowledge of the industry. Okay.
Yes, I'm speaking about pure statistics in general. So a very average picture. Of course, people vary, and we will come to that a little bit later. So it's usually a middle-level manager or senior manager. And this is a person who is usually with the company about 6 to 10 years. So nobody who is too new, or nobody who is with this company for the whole life. Another characteristic would be that this person usually works in collusion with other employees. So it's usually not one person, it's usually a team. And finally, when the fraud is revealed, there is a tendency to see that it's not a one-off case. So it's a series of cases. If the person does it, most probably he or she will return to this pattern and do a similar thing several times. Probably it's related to the fact that the frauds are not revealed immediately, as we discussed during the last podcast. So it takes some time for the company to reveal it. So the person gets this, time to commit further instances of fraud, and that's why there is a number of cases which are revealed. This is the portrait in a nutshell. Yeah, so I would like to go step by step and go through all of these characteristics and see what we think about it and whether we believe in it or not, and what is so special about each of that characteristics.
This is very interesting, especially the first one. You started that it's typically a male, and again, from my experience, that was, I do think, only male who were identified as fraudsters. But I do believe that when we spoke about, you did have different experience. So very curious to hear what was your experience in the typical fraudster from number one, number two of the points that you mentioned, and others.
Yeah, we can speculate about why these are predominantly men, but I believe first, I like answering this question is like, why it's predominantly men? And I keep saying that, probably because women are smarter and they can convey their deeds better. But of course, it's a joke. It's a joke. Unfortunately, I think that the practical and sadder reason under the statistics is that we spoke that mainly these are like middle-sized managers, middle-level managers, or senior managers. And if you look at the statistics of the management in companies,
right, the majority,
three-quarters of them are men. So even if we are working on this diversity thing now in America, and we do make some progress in that, still the majority of the management is male. And therefore, if the majority of the population who is committing or potentially can commit a fraud is male, no wonder that the majority of the statistics about the fraudsters also catch men among those.
So that would be very interesting if there would be a room of women, or like it would be mixed, right? The assumption is it could be, then it could be the majority, that majority group, or there's certain like bias against, I don't know if it's a man in a position, a male in a position of power. There's certain dynamics which I witness most of the time. There will be someone with huge ego, someone who does not really care about if he just thinks he will never be caught, and he feels entitled that he can't do that no matter what, even if
we can speculate about personal characteristic of a person, of a fraudster or perpetrator, and we can come to that again later, because I've got one myth that I would like to touch upon, which is not based on statistics, but which is like rumored around people, like who is that fraudster? Again, probably based on the big cases which are announced in press, or based on the movies we see. We can come to that, but it's like more psychological kind of perception of a person who commit big fraud cases. But if we speak about statistics, which is a stubborn thing, I think it is about the proportion between men and women. And that's why the majority of the cases are male. And you mentioned that you never saw a case when a fraudster was a woman. I had such cases, not that many, but there were cases when there was women behind the scheme. So it's not like women are so righteous and they never commit crimes, or they're not that, let's say, risk prone. They're not willing to risk at all, like because of the testosterone in men. There might be partially the reason for that. Like, I mean, maybe men are more eager to risk because the higher the risks, the higher the benefits, maybe. But I think this proportion of like men and women in the management solves this puzzle, for me at least, on rational basis. Now, if we switch to the years, and I think it's also correlates to the fact that these are usually not newcomers and not the people who are standing with the company for a long time. Why? Well, look, again, there are fraudsters who are like much younger, and there are fraudsters, of course, who are like 60 and older, of course. But the majority, again, are in this middle age group. And I think the reason for that is when you just start your career, and you probably remember yourself as well, you're over enthusiastic, you're eager to learn, you want to prove yourself. You are not even thinking about like potential ways how to, steal money or assets, etc., etc. You are just curious to figure out how the business works, how I can bring value to this business, how I can become a better professional. And I think at some point of time, when you get to this level, when you are like really professional, when you know your company, when you know how the company works, when you know, again, what are the traditions in the company, like, for example, if all salespeople do commit certain kind of, financial statements distortion, then you're thinking, why I'm not doing that? I also want a bigger bonus. Like, why wouldn't I do if everyone is doing? So you need some time, some number of years to get to this situation, to get to the state of mind. Let's put it this way. This is how I explain it. And also what crossed my mind is we shouldn't forget about the middle age crisis. And I think it's a real thing. At this point of time, when you're 35, 40, 45, you're rethinking your values and rethinking the essence of life. And you're just like, why I'm supposed to stay here in my office and work hard all my life. I don't want to do it, probably. I want to have easier ways to earn money, easier ways to bring more to my family, or to spend on the things that I want to spend, or to buy like a more expensive car.
Or yacht, right? Yacht. Yeah.
What can I do to get it? And sometimes people get in this professionalism and try to do their work as perfect as they can to get those bonuses, to make a perfect, great career. And some people, diverse into, turn into another avenue, such as how can I work, smarter in caveats, of course, smarter rather than harder. How can I get better benefits without applying too much efforts into that? Again, this is my explanation. I cannot get into people's brain, but I think that might be the reason why these are the middle-aged people who are committing the majority of the crimes.
So they're questioning their own existence in terms of professional versus personal. Why do I need to spend so many years to achieve certain basics in life, right? And then it's exactly like sort of during the midlife crisis, you suddenly start, do you really need a yacht? And if you need a yacht, or better like a Ferrari.
Now or never.
Now or never, right? Like, and then you still have some time, just even if you lose everything, you can change the profession or something. So, and you still have that drive and energy for committing something, right? So, okay.
Yeah, so I guess that might be a valid reason for that. And then we're coming to the level of the people committing fraud. So I said that it's mainly middle-sized level or senior people. I am a little bit skeptical about these particular statistics, mainly because the frauds which are revealed and which are reported and which we discuss here, which get into statistics, it's usually bigger cases. So if it's like a junior person who is committing a crime, usually it's like a minor amount, which is not reported, which does not reflect in the financial statements just because it's minor. It's just doesn't get on the radar. But also, I think middle-level people and senior people have more access to assets. So if you're a junior, probably you have a boss above you, and you cannot just, misappropriate an asset without being noticed. So you should be a person in power to commit something significant, but also only significant cases get into statistics. So that's why I'm explaining that. There is also an interesting trend. So the higher the position of the person, the bigger the loss for the company from fraud. And I think it's only logical, because the more senior you are, the more you can kind of misappropriate, the more you can take from the company, because you've got more power, more levels of approval, etc., etc.
And the example will be like starting with the CEO and the power imposed on, it is imposed in this situation of a fraudster behavior, right, on the organization. And that's kind of the largest amount that could be stolen. There are many examples, including the Tsennykh case and many others. So
the higher your level, the more authority you've got. And the more significant decisions you can take for the company, including those, negatively impacted decisions, such as misappropriation of assets or concealing some numbers in the financial statements. So then I also mentioned that usually perpetrators work as a team, not as one person. And the explanation for that is pretty simple as I see it. It's very difficult to commit something only by yourself, especially in the companies where there are some internal controls, not even necessarily strongest, but any internal controls. Because usually if you have certain amount of money to pay, for example, to your vendor, you need to have an approval of 2 people. So it either should be another person who is agreeing with you that this amount should be paid, or it should be, the person who is like involved in the whole scheme and who asks you to actually post that transaction. So it should be at least, an accountant and the the head of purchases department, who agree between each other how they are doing that, and then the scheme could work.
So this is very interesting. So you have to watch for the dynamics between employees in the position of decision-making process, right? And not only in power, but someone who decides certain things. And if it's an accountant and someone like in procurement, suddenly they go and, I don't know, drink coffee every day together. They have a more friendly dynamic, and there could be potentially some family ties, something, right, that bonds them together. There could be potential more opportunity for risk for fraud, right?
Well, bonding, there is nothing wrong in bonding. I'm just saying that because I had a situation when boss was so dominant and so controlling that it actually caused the fraud later on, because people were so stressed about this constant control and challenges and questioning, like, why did you make drink a coffee with this person, or like, why I'm like really literally quoting, why you're going in the toilet in pairs, like why two people go at the same time. So we shouldn't go that far. We shouldn't suspect anyone who is friendly at work. At the end of the day, we spend a lot of time at work with our colleagues, and we do make friends. Like my best friends are all from my former companies. It doesn't mean that we wanted to commit a fraud, but what could work in this situation is a primitive rotation of stuff, especially in the positions which are important for paying for certain things, or again, safeguarding the assets, and making sure that people do take vacations, believe it or not. A lot of the cases when a fraud was revealed, in my experience, was then one person who was in a position, let's say of an accountant, went for a vacation, and another person substituting him or her saw that there is some weird pattern happening. So let's say again, let's take our example. There is a collusion between an accountant and the head of purchase department, and this accountant is ill or on vacation, and another accountant comes, but there is no agreement between this. Like you cannot, agree with every accountant that you will be committing a fraud. Not everyone will agree to that, right? So this new person is just like, that's an interesting vendor we are paying for. I do not recall that we were getting some consulting services in this respect. And it was literally several cases when that person became a whistleblower and raised their voice and said, like, you know what, this is very weird thing, so very weird pattern. Or I saw some transactions which were done during the weekend, which shouldn't be done, just because they were in the place of the person who was involved in the fraud, and they noticed that something is off.
So fresh perspective and someone rotating, and you and I don't remember it was the same case or not, we worked together, but I really strongly remember the situation when the CFO, CEO, one of those were not taking any vacation at all. And when I directly asked, have you ever been on vacation? And the answer was no during the last about 3 to 4 years. That was quite surprising. Again, the question was why you don't go on vacation. The answer was, I don't really need vacation. I have really great luxury life. It was a really big question mark. And then there were a lot of things that we found out. But it was one of those triggers, never going on vacation, or if going on vacation and nobody helps during that period of time, it basically the
person takes literally a laptop and sitting on the beach, as they said, like was approving the transactions. That is like super weird and very strange, and that actually triggered our further interest, and we found something in the actions of this person. It's really good that you mentioned that, because I wanted to speak about red flags as well, because again, statistics shows that in the majority of cases when the frauds were committed, the red flags were identified well before the scheme was actually revealed, and they were ignored. So again, these red flags, such as like a person never goes on vacation or luxury lifestyle. I know it's like from the textbook, and people might have a luxury lifestyle, nothing wrong with that. But again, there are certain red flags which owners or auditors or again shareholders should keep in mind. And if there are such red flags, please do not ignore them. Go ahead and like try to look around that. There might be nothing in there, but there might be something there. Just don't ignore those red flags.
And it goes back to the basics. I believe we already spoke about that in the prior episode about the intuition and it just that something which feels wrong, it could be wrong, right? Something like the initial reaction, the really expensive watch, I don't know, Rolex, any other great brands, too much of like expensive clothing, cars, anything that you can find on the accounts or of the accounts and the way you just interact with employees. That's important, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I think we actually covered all the main characteristics, but I would like to touch upon a couple of other things which are interesting from the point of view of statistics. So one of the things is like, what are the reasons why people commit fraud? And like, I'm absolutely sure a lot of people will say it's just greed, but you would be surprised how various those reasons might be. Yes, the personal financial gain prevails, but also it might be the desire to cover losses. Some people are really like, if we're speaking about financial statements fraud, some people, some managers really want to conceal certain losses, not only because they want to receive high bonuses, but just because they're too ashamed to admit that they were bad managers or something went wrong. So that might be the case. Another case might be difficult personal situations, such as, I don't know, sick child or parents that need support, or person can get like a lot of that in casino playing. Again, it's not an excuse, of course, but there are so many reasons why people might commit it. And I thought, since it's in the statistics, it would be nice to touch upon that.
Are you ready to protect your business from financial risk and fraud? My independent and global firm, TSENU Consulting, specializes in forensics, investigations, valuations, and litigation consulting. My mission is to help you identify and mitigate risks while maximizing your company's value. Whether you're a corporate executive, investor, or law firm, TSENU's expert approach provides rigorous, white-gloved deliverables tailored to your unique needs. With a strategic and global presence, TSENU Consulting is ready to become your trusted advisor. TSENU Consulting, where protecting value and preventing fraud is not just our business, it's our passion. Go to www.tsenu.global.
Another thing that I wanted to actually bring to your attention, and I would like to hear your opinion about that. Do you think that people who commit fraud are smart people in general, smart, talented, or are they more like, I don't know, primitively thinking?
This is a great question, and I guess it goes back to evil versus stupid, right? Like, are you, because there are different situations, but we're speaking about evil situations here, just purely evil, someone really planning that fraud. In my opinion, and again, based on experience that I had in forensic accounting investigations, most of those people, if not all of them, they are very creative. They have very high IQ, and most of the time their mind works slightly different than the majority, and they know about that since they were like teenagers or kids, that since high school, since middle school, they were quite special in terms of the way they thought. They think always outside of the box. They probably felt that they're smarter than others. Not necessarily that they are, but in general, I do think that they are quite special in terms of their intelligence. They're quite special in terms of their creativity. And the third component is they are sort of ambitious and entitled, but that's more of a characteristics, right? But it's blended all together. To answer your question specifically, I do think in the majority of cases they are very sharp and has high IQ and high AQ, but in a wrong way to a certain extent used. Based on my experience, again, there were situations when I felt the more I interacted, the more a person was just entitled and was doing more and more stupid things. But again, we're speaking about evil. And I do think in most cases, those people who committed fraud, they were one of the most interesting business people I've ever met in my life. And it's hard to even forget them, but what they have presence. In addition to their intelligence, in addition to their creativity, they have that presence that they want to show off. And in most cases, in most scenarios, they're actually really, they stand out. That's how I notice. So once I notice that, it's an immediate trigger for me. Not necessarily that a person who has great presence stands out really well, but they could be very unique in different ways. They can be very polished the way they present things. They can be really razor sharp about, speaking about certain topics. They could be just really, really smart about certain things or knowledgeable about certain things. But I think the most common ground that I notice, they have high ego. They want to achieve a lot in life. They undermine everyone else. They do believe that they're smarter than everybody else, and they have their own positioning of they are entitled to commit that fraud, and they will never be caught. And if they will be smart enough to play it. I think that's more like a typical, I'll play it around.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this description. That's great. And that's exactly the myth I would like to discuss, which I do not agree with. The reason is everything that you are telling here about is like about movies and about very big cases that you participated in, really big cases. So it's like a very top of the iceberg. I've met probably 2 or 3 people in my career who were really big fraudsters whom I admired. I personally admired the creativity of those people, as you said, the personal qualities of those people, how they could, speak to people, persuade people. People in their team whom they involved in the scheme truly believed that they're not doing anything wrong. They were so kind of feeling being a part of the family, being a part of the team, that they didn't even, realized what is going on for some purpose, believe it or not. Although we were speaking about huge Ponzi scheme or big banking loan fraud. And the person whom I'm specifically remembering now is he created a team consisting of a lawyer, of a finance person. There were so many people involved, and nobody was thinking about reporting that fraud because they believe that they're doing the right thing. They're doing something. He managed to persuade everyone that they're doing a good thing for the bank to make it stronger and better for the future. So I think the reason why we believe that these people are somehow superior in terms of intellect and everything else is because the big cases show it this way. I think, again, the majority of the cases, these are pretty primitive schemes. Again, if you remember when we were investigating certain things, I had cases when a person was just transferring money to her own bank card. There was a payroll and there was an accountant sitting on payroll, and she would have 100 of lines, and 101 line would be again her name. She would be somewhere high there for her real salary, and there will be another salary going to her card. The thing is, just nobody was checking that. But I don't think it was out of box decision. I don't think she even thought of how to conceal it. It was obvious on all the papers. She couldn't do that. Another example might be when people create falsified, invoices. Very often the numbers are repetitive. So there is even a theory how you can reveal such invoices on databases. If you look at the data and you reveal the invoices with repetitive amount in them, then might be, again, a red flag that these invoices were artificially created. Nothing smart about that. They just do it because why not? They just don't think through what would be the next steps. So again, sometimes you're looking at it and you're just why you didn't even try to conceal it. Or another example is you're creating a company outside, and then this company was created, let's say, yesterday, and today you're signing a huge contract with this company. A very quick check in the databases and the internet will show you that this company was just created. It has zero balance sheet, it has zero P&L, and then suddenly you're paying to this company for, I don't know, a construction. So huge contract like that. People do not always think true. What is true is, yes, they are risk prone, and they are either pushed to the situation when they are committing fraud by their family situations or life situations, or they might be those evil genius whom you referred to in the first, description, as you said. We just know more about such cases. That's why the perception, when we think about it, we're just like, that must be like super, smart people who are thinking everything through and who are making a perfect crime. The last thing I want to say, there are no perfect crimes. If somebody will properly look into that, if somebody will be tasked to do certain things, the crime will be revealed, even if it's performed by a genius. So that's probably something that I would conclude with as an investigator. So there is always hope that even if your company becomes a victim of a fraud, no matter who committed it, a genius or a simple accountant who didn't think through the scheme, we can always reveal it, and we can always help you to figure out what to do in the future to avoid such situations.
This is very, very interesting. And again, I guess we're going back to the risk taking, right? Like how the person is ready to, how much risk, and also depending on the situation of a lifetime. And also, it is very interesting to compare our experiences, because there's certain perception. I did and do speak about my own, those ones that I was lucky to find. Sometimes it's just kind of pick and choose. But just going back one more time, I think what was very interesting, you mentioned that men versus women. And again, I mentioned like men identifying and women identifying, professionals, specifically gender neutral in general, but just kind of like in terms of statistics published, it usually says men and women. When we speak about that, I am very curious to hear a little bit more, a few juicy stories that you had maybe to the audience in terms of something you did not expect and you felt, oh, I could be wrong. And then voila, like an aha moment that happened to you based on the profile, someone based on the statistics expectation, or versus someone based on exactly what I mentioned, like someone very much a genius. Just a few specific personal experience from your professional project.
Yeah, I try and never come to a case with the expectation, because you can be surprised, or it can even shock your professional skepticism if you come into the case with a ready-made hypothesis who it might be and who it might not be. But I remember at least one case when I was genuinely surprised, and it was a general manager of a big tourist company who did like a number of actions which we're looking into, but we didn't suspect him of doing some minor things. So when we started to look into different classification of expenses, we found out that his business expenses are quite high, which is not, rare, but we looked into that and we realized that this person was reimbursing from the company for basically everything, like toothpaste, like slippers for home use and other things. So everything that you can imagine which he bought for home usage, like even minor things. We're speaking about super rich person. So he genuinely doesn't need this minor money for buying slippers or toothpaste or something else. I was really surprised that this person was willing to risk it to kind of go through the company and reimburse for such a minor thing. It was a puzzle for me. I was just like, I'm still puzzled, like why this person did it. If you do risk it, from my perspective, again, I'm sorry for that, you do risk big things, right? You do commit.
You would not do that for the toothpaste, right? Like, you would not.
Risk. Like, yeah, why would you do such minor things? And of course, we revealed other schemes as well. And I think the reason why this person did it, he got so relaxed and so kind of self-confident, and I think this is what you were looking for when you were describing a potential of fraudster, a typical fraudster. People become too confident and nothing will be revealed and they can do anything they want. And I think this is what happened in his case. I was just genuinely surprised that a person of that level would go that low, if you wish.
Materiality wise. So it was really not material. Yeah.
Materiality and morally wise, like why would you do that? Because your subordinates, your accountant who is posting those transactions, they see it. And I thought it was a little bit embarrassing.
So was it just a thrive potentially, or like that hype from just doing that? It doesn't really even matter if it's small or large.
We didn't have a chance to have a final interview with this person. We usually do an interview at the end, but his shareholders decided to get rid of him earlier than we could do that. So I couldn't ask him, like, why did you do this specific type of transactions? It is what it is.
This is very interesting. For me, usually the challenges we spoke about most of the time, we try to highlight the evil situation when a person is committing that intentionally, right? But I did see certain cases when, again, it's really hard, even looking retrospectively, to prove that and say 100%, but from all the evidence and information gathered, it looked like a person actually was doing initially the stupid thing, and then it transitioned to evil once, as you mentioned, like the life situation slightly changed, the person progressed in executive position, an executive managerial role, progressed a couple of more years, and then little by little this person started doing more and more, and then it became a lot of assets.
Just to be clear, the definition of fraud presupposes that it's an intentional action. Fraud is always an intentional action to gain certain profits from the action.
That's so interesting. That's why it's so hard, right?
If a person made a mistake which led to the losses of the company, then it's not a fraud, right?
Exactly. But when it kind of transitions.
But we're speaking about traditional fraudsters. So fraudsters are people who are doing it intentionally.
And have you seen situations when initially it was not really intentional, but then it transitioned to being intentional, or it's really hard to catch the transition from?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember when the transition happened, but I do know that there are a number of cases when the person was seeing other people doing it. And then, as I said, with the time, he or she would say, like, okay, if my peers are doing that, why I'm not doing it? And it's not revealed, it's not punished. So why wouldn't I do it? I also have a family. I also have kids to take care of. My wife also wants this, expensive car. Why wouldn't I do that? So that's what we saw in our practice list.
Well, this is incredible. And again, you saw many cases with fraudsters. I saw, in my experience, also some of, would say enough cases. It's definitely, we can speak about for another 2 hours, and there would be some situations that will be really awkward and unusual. But I think if we can summarize one more time and what we spoke about, that would be helpful. Like, number one, it's basically male identifying professional, someone in a position of power, someone who spent enough time during with an organization so this person could progress and see and get comfortable enough, and then someone potentially working together in a group and committing fraud together.
Correct.
And then probably that was the fifth one.
That's the essence in general.
And just being open to there could be, you can spend 10 years, 20 years in the profession and still be surprised how who that potential fraudster is.
Yeah, no, totally. And again, we're speaking about average. There are exceptions, of course, so don't be blind, like don't exclude from a potential fraudster group anyone who is younger or older, the age we were discussing. It's just an average, and I think it's interesting statistics to look into and think over.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Yulia. Again, Yulia has more than 20 years experience working in forensic accounting investigations, anti-corruption, fraud. Yulia is a principal with TSENU Consulting, and I hope to bring you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe. Reviews are very helpful. If you'd like to get in touch with me, go to www.tsenu.global and book a call today.